We'll have 20 minutes. Oh, I forgot to remind you, John. I'm sorry. Then we'll have a 20 minutes Q&A that you will have a powerful opportunity to deepen your spiritual practice through engaging our speaker. Please get your pen and pad to note things that you do not understand, things you want more information about, or something you are compelled to share during the Q&A portion of the meeting. This is a powerful opportunity to grow along spiritual lines. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And our speaker has chosen as a topic what we what we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And that's from the big book, page 85. And to introduce our speaker is Calvin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm so grateful to introduce Mildred, And because I met Mildred four and a half years ago when we first started, went to Zoom, and she touched my heart ever since. She's been touching my heart ever since. When I came to Canada, when I came up to Toronto, Mildred came and she was there with me when I did the talk up there. And not just that, every Wednesday, except the last Wednesday, I've been with Mildred for the last 6, 7 months. And she took us through emotional sobriety. And then she took us through the 12 steps. And now we're halfway through the traditions. And that's, and I can't wait to get back. Mr. Today. Oh, Lord. But no, tomorrow. And I want to introduce Mildred. She's a blessing. She's a blessing to this program. She's a blessing to me. Thank you.
Am I supposed to get started?
I'll let you know when you have 5 minutes left, Mildred. I'll put it up for you, okay?
You said 35 minutes, eh?
Yeah, I'll let you know when there's 5 minutes left.
Okay, I've got my watch, but I would really appreciate if we had no black screens. This business of doing things on Zoom, it's not a one-way street. And I, or whoever is doing the talk, is giving some energy. And looking at a black screen doesn't make sense to me. What are we doing? Are we cleaning the house, having sex, petting the dog, or whatever? All kinds of thoughts come to mind. I saw some mouths go open. I know that there are times when people can't, for whatever reason, but it's certainly, I just feel something is not right when I'm looking at half the screens that are dark. So if you can turn your faces on, I would appreciate that. So thanks for bringing that up, Calvin. So my job is to talk about step 11. And I have to say that often in being asked to do something, whatever it is, a couple of times I have had really very different, as I prepared, a very different experience of what I started to talk about. But today, it's step 11. Where I'm at with step 11 tonight is not where I began earlier yesterday, actually. I had been doing some thinking about it before then, but I've learned something about myself. See, I think the process of learning and growing is a daily process. And I think also that sometimes we don't realize where we're at. I don't. I realize now step 6 is altogether, step 11. It's altogether different than where I had started. I was going to talk a whole lot about different types of prayer and different types of meditation. And I'm not going to do that so much because I want to talk about what step 11 has really, what I have seen about myself, something I have wondered about myself all along, but I never could see it. And this morning when I pulled out my notes again, I saw it. I have learned something about God, and I've learned something about myself. I've learned that God is pure love. I've been reading Neil Donald Walsh, and he has been talking in one of his latest books about a new definition for God. That's not God just as love, God is pure love, meaning that God doesn't demand anything back from us. He just loves us and wants us to grow and change. What I'm getting at is this. Well, I'll start the way I was going to start and then get to what I want to say. The other day, when I pulled out some books and thought I want to start thinking about what I'm going to talk about, um, the television was on. And I think it was the General Secretary of the United Nations was being interviewed. And they were talking about the chaos in the world. And even to the point of mentioning uh, nu- possible nuclear problems. And at the end, just before it was over, the interviewer said to the General Secretary, "Does the United Nations have power to stop some of the violence and the war?" And he kind of shrugged, and I turned it off because it hit me, because I thought about the program. If you said to me, or I said to you, "Do you in AA have power to change?" If you knew your book, you would say yes. Because if you know the book, you know that it's not your power, it's God's power. And if we get right with that, we can do think about it. You know, 51 years ago, I was on a park bench. I'm not on a park bench today. And how does that happen? Think of your own life and the despair and the situation that you were brought to. I was taken because I had nothing when I came in. And life is very different now. But I felt such gratitude for being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I felt such unbelievable gratitude for being an alcoholic and for having the program and learning the things that I have learned. What does our book say? Lack of power. Yeah, that's our dilemma. But we have found the power that can fix our lives. I'm not using the exact words, but how good is that? And so wherever I go, I'm not like the secretary, the general secretary was sitting there saying, "I don't think we've got the power." And he didn't say it quite like that, but he was implying that we don't have the power. And I know that you and I don't have the power, but through the program and through what happens here, we do have the power. So just think about it. We've got a solution. I don't have to live with crap if I don't want to. We've got a solution. And there's a whole chapter that talks about the solution. We've got grace available to us, and we've got that power. So that's how I got started on this. And then I'm very excited to be speaking to you about the sweet spot of my life, step 11. And I'm calling it the sweet spot because it is prayer and meditation and consciousness and knowledge of His will and grace and power. Did you know that years ago? I didn't. And if I heard those things, it meant nothing to me. It means something to me. It means everything today. How does it all fit? You know, if you read step 11, in a way, it's a shocker. Having had thought through prayer and meditation, just think of where you were at some time in your life. I think of where I was. Sought through prayer and meditation, get out of here with that. To improve our conscious contact with God, what does that mean? And as we understood him, how did you understand God when you were sitting there with a 40 ounce of whatever you were guzzling? How did we understand God? Praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That's as big as it gets. You know, I've been living with step 11 now in a very special way for some days, and it's just powerful. It seems to me that step 11 is really the heartbeat of AA, of life even. Imagine being told to pray only for knowledge of his will for us, only. A big, bold suggestion. That isn't what I used to do. I prayed that God would fix the world the way I wanted it. But consider, we've done the steps. So by the time we get to step 11, we have been through some information. We have been through some spiritual truth. We have done some of the work. And so the principles of those steps have been brought to the issues that were raised in step 11. Who am I? Why am I here? See, I don't think that we can really have good life without considering that. How do I see my life in relationship to God? What does conscious contact mean? What does it involve? Or is it just words? How do I understand God? How do I see my relationship to God? And how do I see God's relationship to me? What about power to carry out God's will? What about being rocketed into the fourth dimension? See? Because what I think as I look at step 8 now, step 11, it's big. It carries all those things. So I want to tell you just a little bit about my life, because how does the third dimension, see, when I came in, I knew nothing about the third dimension and the fourth dimension. And when people talked about being rocketed into the fourth dimension, I didn't know what that meant. And now I realize that third dimension is my schoolroom. I'm here in this body and I'm not going to stay in this body, but I get a chance to live here in this body and learn what life is really about. So where I began was as the baby of a big family. We were Roman Catholic and we went to church. And because I was the baby and I was a lot younger than the others, I was lonely a lot of the time because they were all busy about their lives. And you know, that's a long time ago. And people kind of had the idea children are meant to be seen and not heard. And I don't think I wasn't hurt in any way or abused, but I was lonely. And I cried a lot. I cried a lot because I had a sister who was retarded and she cried. And I won't get into that, but I wanted her to change. And I knew there was somebody who could do it because I loved God. We went to church and I identified God with that beautiful sky. And as a child, I used to lie on the grass by the hour and look up at the stars and the moon and the aurora borealis, and I knew life was good. And then when I realized my sister cried, I wanted it to stop, so I asked God. Ever ask God for something when you really want it? And as far as I was concerned, God was love, God was good, no problem for God to do something. You know what happened? Nothing. Not on my time. It happened, but many years later, but not on my time. And I became confused, in addition to feeling alone. And then at 5 years of age, I took a drink. I took a drink not because I knew anything. There was my father had his buddies out And little Mildred poured the drinks, and I put some into myself. I didn't know anything was going to change, and the world changed, and it has changed to this day. You see, Dr. Silkworth, God bless Dr. Silkworth, because he really understood what this disease is. And I read that doctor's opinion often because he got it. He said there's something in us. You see, that when you and I, because of the body we have, we get the phenomenon of craving, but we also get something else. We get freed from any pain we have. And I felt different. I took that drink and I no longer worried about my sister crying. It was all good. The world loved me and I loved the world, and it was just fine. And I was an alcoholic from the word go. That's all I thought about. Where's the booze? Now, when you're 5 and 6, you drink different, don't you? Uh, but what I found was I learned to lie, I learned to cheat, I learned to steal, and I found out where everybody kept their booze. So I have to tell you, I got as much booze really as I wanted. And that's what I did for the next 35 years. So I bet you're sitting there, count, get your fingers up. She was 5 and 35, that makes 40. And if she's 51 years sober, that makes her 91. So I'm just telling you, so you don't have to count. I am 91, and I would say a very good looking 91 too, if you really want the truth of what I think. And very much alive and grateful to be alive. And so, where did alcohol take me? I couldn't stop because I so liked the way I felt. You know that part in the big book where it talks about how we tried to stop and couldn't, and then we tried different things. Not me. I wanted to be drunk. I wanted to have the booze. If anybody said to me I should stop, I just had no more talk with them because I wanted to drink. I needed to drink. Where did it take me? Well, I'm smart, so I finished high school at 14. And I hung around with a bunch of boys who had a little choir, and we drank and we partied, and I loved it. And then at 17, somebody spoiled it. One of the girls said she was going to a convent, and everybody made a fuss over her. I do not like when you don't make a fuss over me. So 3 weeks later, I announced I'm going to a convent, and everybody laughed at me. They said, you don't belong. Nobody would take me. They said, you're too wild. And I finally found a convent, of course, in the United States, because that's where the wild convents were. They didn't smell me and they took me, and I was in that place for 15 years. What I want to stop here a little bit and tell you what my understanding today was. I never really put this together, that my whole life I sought God. I didn't realize I was doing that, not to do God's will. I sought God to do my will. I made it look as if I was seeking God to do God's will. Today, when I picked up the book and I looked at step 6, step 11, I knew exactly what I had done. Because when I went to the convent, did I have any ideas of God is love and God is good and I'm going to change and all that? How can you do that? How can you go to a convent when you're drunk? I had no intention of giving up the booze, and I never did. I was a drunken nun, and that's saying something, I'll tell you. I was there 15 years, and um, did it bother me? No, I just felt I have to drink, and I did. I stayed 15 years, and then out of the convent I came, and I found my next place. My next place was the bars. Bars, men whose degradation that eventually took me to jail. And I remember the chief of police coming in, yelling at me And he said, I'd never seen an ex-nun in jail before. And he said, I better never see you here again either. I couldn't stop. And it took me to a park bench. You see, I'm not one of those who came in all gussied up. I was the tramp that had lived on a park bench. I even tried marrying my psychiatrist. You know, they locked me up 32 times. And eventually I married my psychiatrist, and that didn't work either. And the morning of May the 18th, 1973, the police took me off the park bench to a psych ward again. There was no big news in that. And the morning of the 20th, I made a decision. Our book says we have to concede to our innermost selves. I would always concede to you if I thought I could get away with it. But to concede to myself, no. Concede to God, no. I need to drink. And so that morning I conceded. Life doesn't work for me. I don't know how to do it. I'm going to take my life. And I'm out of here. You know, we concede different ways. I didn't concede. I didn't think that was a prayer. I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm out of here. And at that moment, I had a spiritual experience. The compulsion to drink was lifted. The obsession was lifted. I'm now sober 51 years and several months. And in all that time, I've never had the compulsion. I've never had the obsession. I don't know how it came to you. I know how it came to me. Bang, that was it. And I remember standing there and I said, I don't know how to live sober. You'll have to send me somebody. I didn't know who I was talking to. And there was a rap on the door, and a man stood there and he said, you know, I think you need to come to this hospital. And he took me to a hospital. And after that, they were going to discharge me. I had no place to go. And I spent a whole year on Skid Row. So I know where this disease takes us. You see, Dr. Silkworth, God bless Dr. Silkworth. John, how much time do I have left?
15 minutes.
Oh, okay. I love what Dr. Silkworth says about the disease because I think he really lays it on the line. Because in that, he said, we're, you see, I don't think we're different than other people except in the fact that we react different to alcohol. See, if you're a human being, you share the same kind of experiences. We all have instincts, don't we? And those instincts, we need sex, we need companionship, and we need security. And there are 8.5 billion of us, so there's pain involved in that whole thing. The only difference with you and me is if we get into pain, we drink alcohol. See, I have never thought that drinking alcohol was my big problem. What does our book say? It says the main problem rests in the mind. It's in the way I think. And that's why, as I see it today, step 11 is so unbelievably important because how do I feel about myself? How do I think about God? How do I think about you? How do I live my life? You see? And so he understood that. And he said he understood the depth of alcoholism. He said, we need a message of depth and weight because frothy emotional appeal won't stop us. That's me, you see. And he said, our ideals must be grounded in a power greater than ourselves. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. I don't think it's just about, well, it's going to keep me from not drink or help me not to drink alcohol. It's a way that I can change the way I see the world, the way I see my life, the way I relate to God. See, and he says also, we need an entire psychic change. You know, I'm very active these days, have been all my life. Why? Because this has gotten this whole business of trying to fix the world and get my way and have life. And alcohol did it in a heartbeat. That can't be anymore. So I've got to find a way. And the way I have found is being in Alcoholics Anonymous. But he says our ideals must be grounded in a power greater than ourselves. You see, that's why this program works. I don't know about how things are where you live, but here in Toronto, we have a serious, serious, serious drug problem. People dying every week of overdoses. And what is that about? You see, and some people don't want this solution that we have. I think that if you have any doubts about where this problem is, the doctor's opinion clarifies it. Frothy emotional appeal won't work. But at that time, when I came here the first time, after I did try to come into AA, it didn't work. But when I came finally in 1973, I had a sponsor who knew how to deal with me. And we read the doctor's opinion and we studied the doctor's opinion. And I saw what it said. I need this something more than human power. No human power can keep me sober, not myself or you. It has to be grounded in that spiritual value. The first 21 years that I was in AA, I really relied on pages 86, 87, and 88. You know, they're a great start for step 11 because they don't, they don't give you a lot of theology and that kind of thing. But what they do is give you behaviors to do. And I could do those behaviors. Plus, I had a good sponsor. And as I stayed sober, life started to change. And I became very successful. And I became a good member of AA and I became very rich. I started buying houses. And so, what I'm saying is, my life was all on fixing the outside. And the problem isn't outside, that's the problem. You can fix the outside like me. And at 21 years sober, I was suicidal again. And why? You know, when I think back now, I understand it. And Bill Wilson, he understood it because in step 8 in the 12 and 12, what does he say about it? He says, we have stuff buried below the level of consciousness. At the time of these occurrences, they have given our emotions violent twists. Where did that happen to me? When I was 3 and 4 years old, when I looked at the sky and when I asked God to fix my sister and it didn't happen, that's when it happened to me. So what I think the message I really want to leave behind is this, is God is present. You know, I went back to the big book and I wrote some of the things that have really talked to me. We've been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence. We've entered the world of the spirit. Our spiritual principles would solve all my problems. Spiritual principles, not Mildred doing whatever she wants. Either God is everything or nothing. Again, fabulous. What the book is about, to find the power that will solve your problem. I remember the first time my sponsor had me read that. I said problems, and he said, you don't have problems, you have a problem. Page 62 says it. False self. I've got to be rid of it or it kills me. God makes that possible. See to it that your relationship with him is possible. And then sometime in that process, I was in Prince Albert. I'm trying to squeeze a lot of stuff in because I want to make this point. I met Chuck Chamberlain. And Chuck became kind of a semi-sponsor of mine. And he used to say, "You already are everything you can be." I didn't understand that. And he'd say, "Mildred, you have only one problem." And I'd say, "No, no, no, Chuck, you don't understand. I've got problems with men and money and sex." And I'd go on. He'd say, "No, you don't. You have one problem. You think you're separate." And he said to me at that time, when you understand there's only one, you'll be okay. You know what? I understand today. There's only one God and there's only one of us. We just show up in different bodies. That's all. And so if I understand that, that means I've got to treat you different. And what does page 55 say? Page 55 says that deep within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It's in you. So how dare I mistreat you and abuse you and judge you and all that kind of stuff? You know what Einstein said? He said, "There's only one of us here." And guess what Meister Eckhart said? Meister Eckhart lived in the 1200s, and the church didn't like him very much. He was too spiritual. Imagine that. He said the soul grows by subtraction. I thought it grew by addition. That's what I tried. That's what I wanted, God in my life, because I was going to grow by addition. Anyway, at 21 years, I had another big, big changeover in my life. I was suicidal because I didn't feel good inside. You see, I think that if we get right with God, there comes a point. You see, I said, I saw today that I think for a lot of my life, I chased God because I was thinking God was going to fix my life and make me feel good. And I saw it today when I looked at step 11. It's just the opposite. I need to chase God so I can do his will. That's why something wasn't right in my life. Imagine you go to a convent and you need to drink, but you don't understand that. What, like, I see where my life became difficult. So I expect I'll live another 50 years now that I see things better. You know, doing, okay, thanks. So um, I found God put, this is the other thing that I'd like to leave with you. I think God has been active in my life every day and is in my life. The right person shows up and says something that stirs me up. Alice comes along and says, "I want you to do the step 11." And I think I'm going to spend my time talking about prayer and meditation. And I'm not talking about the how to, I'm talking about the need to do those, but not the how to. Because what I see is that a lot of my life, I like going to the convent is a typical example. I'm going there and I don't really believe in God. I go to a convent drunk and stay drunk for 15 years. That just doesn't make some kind of sense. And when I think about how I've done life, I just see it a whole new way. Imagine I'm going to seek God through prayer and meditation, and I'm going to grow in that way. You know, I don't think I've been a bad person, but what I think is this. I think always the chance is that we learn something new and that our ability to deal with God and do God consciousness grows stronger. It certainly has for me. Um, just one thing I would say about prayer. I found this the other day and I thought this is true. He says the purpose of prayer is not the resolution of our problems. The purpose of prayer is to know God. That's a whole different story. To believe that God is present in my life, and I believe that today. I've always really believed it, but just didn't see how that connected in my life. And I think it's a good idea. I have made for myself a spiritual plan. Just like when people go to the gym, they have a plan for how they do their exercises at the gym. People who uh, take medicine, they have a plan for how they take medicine. And I think it's a good idea. I'll tell you why. Because it's too easy to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to meditate 15 minutes from now. And 15 minutes goes by and something else. Whereas if I make a plan, I do have a plan. When I meditate, when I pray, of course, I do it other times too. But there's a certain time where I know I'm going to be sitting in meditation, or I'm going to be sitting reading a spiritual book or whatever. So my 5 minutes will be almost up. And I'm going to read to you because it says it all. In the 12 and 12, this is how the 12 and 12 step 11 ends. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging that comes to us. We no longer live in a completely hostile world. We are no longer lost and frightened and purposeless. Aren't those wonderful things? The moment we catch a glimpse of God's will, we begin to see truth and justice and love as the real and eternal things in life. We're no longer deeply disturbed by all the seeming evidence to the contrary. We know that God lovingly watches over us. We know that when we turn to Him, all will be well with us. That's the thing I've really learned about step 11. I've known it, but I know it different tonight. God has been present in everything that has happened to me to bring me to this night to be here with you. God bless you.
Thank you so
And with such, I want to begin with such deep gratitude. Thank you, Mildred. Thank you for saying yes. And thank you for allowing me to stalk you to get it all lined up. What a beautiful talk. I see a couple hands up, so let's get right to them. Vera, please come on in.
Hi, Vera, grateful recovered alcoholic. Really grateful to have heard your share, Mildred, and just I always love this meeting. You also share a name with my favorite great auntie. It's so I just kept that's been a very prominent name. So you were sharing about when we understand that there's only one God and there's only like one me or us, then things will be okay. And you were talking about separation before that. And after that, you had tied in the soul grows by subtraction. And so I kind of put all of those things together in my notes, but I'm still wrapping my head around it. And so I just wanted to ask if maybe you could elaborate on the soul grows by subtraction and kind of what you were talking about with that oneness and the separation, please.
Yeah, that's a big thing. But the growth by subtraction, page 62, it says the false self will kill us. We need to be rid of the false self. You see, that's where the subtraction comes in. The subtraction is the old ideas. Me chasing God so God would fix my world, that's what has to go. Me judging people because they don't act the way I want them to, that's what has to be subtracted. So that if we are one, that we can live in harmony together. Does that make sense? Yeah. And you see, when they say, see, even the scientists are saying that, not just the philosophers and the spiritual people are saying that we're one. We're all made out of the same thing. And, I think what differentiates us is our ability to think and to choose. See, and that's where we get into trouble. Somebody thinks different from me, and I used to judge you. I don't try not to do that anymore because you have a right to think but the way you do and make the choices that you do. And that's why kindness comes in and love comes in. Okay.
Thank you, Mildred. What a beautiful, beautiful talk, and what a great answer. Calvin, please.
Thank you, Alice. Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin. I'm an alcoholic. Mildred, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I always get so much out of you when you talk. And I was thinking about, could you talk a little bit more about, the third dimension and the fourth dimension when you talked about being
Yeah.
rocketed into the fourth dimension or being
Yeah.
catapulted into the fourth dimension?
I
Go
think
on.
I think that that's something that helps to make life so much easier. The third dimension is the way it's recommended. The body, it's all this stuff, all this stuff that changes, this stuff that doesn't last. If you look around you and you look at your house and the chairs and the cars and so on, 50 years from now, it's not going to be here. Okay, it's going to be, that's the changing part. They say that our bodies change every, Deepak Chopra has talked a lot about that, how the skin of the stomach changes every so many hours and that kind of stuff. That's the third dimension. The fourth dimension is that part that we call God, that part that we don't see, that part that's energy and all of that. So the way you and I were raised, we were raised to get the stuff in the third dimension, get the car and the jewels and the house and the this and the that. And if you get that, you're going to be okay. And spiritual truth says no. That stuff isn't going to last anyway. Have you ever got a new car and then somebody gets a better one and you need a better one? Same with job, all that kind of stuff. That stuff that we can't see. I look at that fourth dimension as I don't see my soul, but I believe it's there. See? And the way we were raised, we struggle to get stuff in the third dimension. And now I realize I need to do the work to be right with God in the fourth dimension, and the third dimension gets better. Okay?
Thank you, Mildred. Lorraine, please come in.
Hi. Hey, thanks, Alice. My name is Lorraine. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Mildred, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Every time I hear you, it's just such an honor and a privilege. And thank you so much for, it just reminds me when you just said we're talking third and fourth dimension. I heard a speaker just say the other day that my goal is to bring my fourth dimension experience into my third dimension reality. And I really liked that. I had to ponder
Yeah.
on that for a while. And so, but anyway, thank you so much for bringing up Chuck Chamberlain. I mean, I'm so just in love with Chuck Chamberlain, so before my time. But when I first got sober 2 years ago, I heard a speaker share that my only problem is a conscious separation from God and my fellows. And my only solution is a conscious connection to God and my fellows. I can't imagine that you got sponsored by him, like kind of. Do you have a Chuck Chamberlain other thing you could tell us? Anything at all?
My
Any old
bingo doesn't work.
any old little story or tidbit about Chuck and
I
your
have to think. I
experience?
have to think about what I want.
Okay, come back after that.
Okay.
Stacy, you're up.
Thank you so much, Mildred. What a wonderful share and so easy to understand. That was so wonderful. Could you please explain more about what you say? God is love. I understood that so wonderfully, but could you please explain that more, please? Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'd be happy to. You know, Do you know that there was some years ago, there was this man, he's still alive, Neil Donald Walsh. Have you ever heard the books Conversations with God? He wrote those books about 1995, I think it was, and he's still alive. And in the last 5 years, he's been talking about, he put out a book called God Talk. And he said he thinks, and I think it's wonderful, that it's more than God is love, because so many people have been raised on the idea that God punishes and God gets angry with us. And if we don't, like he said, he was a little boy, 9 years old, and was told that if he didn't go to Mass on Sunday, he was going to go to hell and that kind of stuff. And he said he believes that God is pure love, that God needs nothing from us, that God just loves us, creates us, puts us here, and says, go to it, Mildred. See what you can do with this life. See how much you can grow and how much you can give to the world and what you can do for others. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
You
Thank
see,
you.
because I think that whole idea of an angry God, and it has never made sense to me, but I know there are people who were taught that. And as he said, God, if God is pure love, then all God wants from us, God wants us to grow. Of course, God doesn't want me to steal and hurt and all that. But it's not that an example that he used. If you have a birthday party and there's a 3-year-old there, and the 3-year-old spills milk on the table, or the 3-year-old spills wine on the table, or whatever, do you take him out and give him a beating? That would just be ridiculous. You clean it up and and that's what he was saying, that God just loves us and puts us here so we can grow and change.
Thank you, Mildred. So we have Julie H., who is on her phone, can't turn her camera on, but Julie H. has a question, and I believe that she is unmuted. Julie, please come in.
Hi, my name is Julie. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Um, my name is Julie. I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to sound like a downer or anything, but I've been coming on here for at least 3 years, and I've been going on the Friday meeting too. I'm in the computer, so I use my phone, and my phone won't let me put my picture up.
It's okay,
And I'm
Julie. You have a question for us?
Julie, that's okay if you are using the phone. That's understandable.
Okay. So here's my question to Mildred. I love you. That's not my question. I love you. I've been
Thank you.
watching you, and I've been following you for years, and pretty much every question that I've had, you've answered. And I love Alice too. There's quite a few years on here that I really love you and that you are taking the program seriously. And I just want to say, wow, just you guys are unbelievable. And Mildred, you rock.
Thank you, Julie. We're so glad you're here. We're really glad that you're a part of our family.
Oh,
Thank you.
yes.
Okay, so now I have Sona. Sona F., thank you for your patience. Please come in.
Hi, Mildred. Thank you so much. You mentioned a book at the beginning that you're reading and an author, and I forgot to write it down.
Was it the one about I think it was about the conversations with God.
You said one that's new, that's something about God is, I can't remember. It was at the very beginning.
That God is everything? I think that I may have mentioned one of his books is called God Talk, and one is God's Solution. And then he wrote, he was on the street, this man was. This was back in the 1900s. And he yelled out to God one night, and he said God started to talk to him, and he wrote down what God said. And then one day he said, somebody said, you should send that to the publisher. And the publishers, he thought, well, that's just a joke, you know, it never get published. And he said he sent it to this publisher, and it got published 15,000 copies in 37 languages. And I've got Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. They do have them they're about $20 or so. And they're start with one. He's actually written 4 books, but they're all about, you know, this idea that God talks to us and that God is not mad at us and so on, and all of that. And I just think we need to nourish that.
Yes.
I hope that answer gives you what you need. If I think of another, but I think that those are the titles I talked about. And they're readable. They're not heavy theology. They're very readable. And he writes in about examples of people like you and I who've, you know, learned things.
Thank you, Mildred. So we are just about out of time. Irina, please forgive me. I'm asking you to come in, Marilyn, but I want to acknowledge all of the love that is in the chat from Mildred. Mildred, so
Thank
much
you.
love in the chat for you.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Marilyn. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much. Listen, I'm going to make it really quick, Mildred. First of all, I just absolutely wanted to thank you. I think you are absolutely remarkable. And this is the second time that I've heard you. I was driving, so I couldn't take notes, but I had 3 things that I was able to remember that I wanted to ask you about. And you talked about us having the power, but that really we don't have power, but
no,
it's God's. Go ahead.
But we do have power, but it's not our own. See, if you read the step says we're powerless over alcohol. And I think we're powerless over everything. But if you go 6 lines above the steps, it says, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. So I had a sponsee here one day, and I was telling her that, and she didn't like it. She got up off the chair and she was dancing around, and she said, see, I have power. And I said, I know you do, but whose is it? That's you right. know, one day when I said that, one of the people who were here said, I guess that means if somebody says, I have all the apples in the world, then you go to that person for an apple. I said, yes. And you see, what that tells me is I've got to be careful how I use the power, because it's not my own. I can't do whatever the hell I want. That's why love and kindness and goodness are so important. That's how it fits. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. What a lovely talk, and what a lovely Q&A. For everyone that's here tonight, please do join us next week. I'm supposed to be